Natural disasters such as hurricanes are devastating. These large storms can cross entire states and can be hundreds of miles wide. They can also generate tornadoes and cause storm surges that can destroy cars, houses, and, of course, people. Consider some of the most memorable hurricanes in our history. In what ways can we quantify the impact they had on society? How lethal they are, how powerful their winds were, or how much damage they ended up causing. You've all heard of hurricanes like the one which devastated Katrina. We'll cover that in this video as well. We'll also educate you about other devastating hurricanes that you may not have heard about. So here is our list of the worst hurricanes in the United States. The Great Galveston Hurricane of 1900. On September 8, 1900, the Galveston Hurricane struck Galveston, Texas. This hurricane was extremely powerful, and it was the worst in U.S. history. It claimed the lives of between 8,000 and 12,000 people. On the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale, it was classified as a Category 4 hurricane. In 1900, the National Weather Service of the United States was relatively basic. They had little knowledge about what the storm was doing. As a result, they were unable to provide people with advance notice. Galveston was built on a sandbar island off the Texas coast. The elevation was only approximately 9 feet above sea level. The population was around 30,000 people. Nobody realized on September 8, 1900, that 8,000 of those people would be gone the next day. The Galveston storm formed in the Middle Atlantic Ocean about August 30, 1900. When it made landfall in Cuba on September 4th, it was still a tropical storm. It arrived in Key West on September 6th. At that point, it had intensified into a full-fledged hurricane. When it drew close to the Texas coast, it was a Category 4 storm. It struck without warning in the early afternoon of September 8th. It was gone by the next morning, as was much of Galveston. It then traveled back east as a tropical storm over the United States. The total cost of the damage was more than $30 million, or $1.32 billion in today's money. Almost immediately, Galveston began rebuilding. A new seawall was constructed, and many structures were lifted several stories. However, it was unable to fully recover. Okeechobee Hurricane of 1928. The Okeechobee Hurricane of 1928, also known as the San Felipe Storm, was a devastating tropical cyclone. Almost 4,100 people were killed from the Northeast Caribbean to Puerto Rico, and from Southeast Florida to North Carolina. When it struck Puerto Rico, this hurricane had winds close to Category 5 and was also a large hurricane. Over 2,500 people were killed in the United States, making it one of the deadliest natural disasters in U.S. history at the time. It hit Florida at Category 4 strength. The hurricane reached the coast of Palm Beach County, Florida, causing extensive damage to many structures. However, it then moved inland. It caused Lake Okeechobee's water level to rise 10 feet. 75 miles of Florida were flooded as a result of the lake. Many people perished as a result of the flood because they were unprepared. For days, dead bodies remained in the scorching Florida sun. When entire families were killed, no one was left to identify the dead. Following the hurricane, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers constructed a huge dike near Lake Okeechobee to prevent future flooding. Chenier Caminada Hurricane of 1893. On the morning of October 2, 1893, a powerful storm slammed into the Louisiana shore near the village of Chenier Caminada, destroying the town and killing almost half of its residents. The hurricane was named Chenier Caminada, although it was also known as the Great October Storm. Around September 27th, this storm evolved from a disturbance in the Western Caribbean Sea, as do many late-season hurricanes. It was a full-fledged hurricane by the morning of the 29th, as it was touching the northeast tip of the Yucatan Peninsula. The storm was only slightly weakened as a result of this, and it quickly regained its strength over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. The hurricane recurved over the northern Gulf due to an incoming front, and its winds were felt reaching the Louisiana shore by the night of October 1st. It had also rapidly deteriorated into a major storm, which made landfall the following morning. The The wind speed was assessed to be 133 miles per hour. All but one house in a little town west of Grand Isle was carried away by a storm surge of about 18 feet. In the hurricane, 779 of the town's 1,471 residents died. The hurricane made landfall in southern Mississippi and Alabama, bringing storm surges along the coast and severe winds inland. As it passed across Georgia and the Carolinas on its way to the Atlantic Ocean, it deteriorated to a tropical storm. Over 2,000 people were killed and $5 million, which is approximately $160 million in today's money, was lost as a result of the storm. South Carolina hurricane of 1881. Most hurricanes that hit Georgia and the Carolinas originate in the Atlantic Ocean east of the Bahamas. Many storms that make landfall north of the Greater Antilles end up threatening this part of the United States. Storms from the eastern Gulf of Mexico pass along the Florida Peninsula and proceed up the Atlantic coast to the Carolinas on a regular basis. A Category 2 hurricane slammed the coastal and interior parts of South Carolina and Georgia, including Savannah, in August 1881. Because the hurricane made landfall on Ossabaw Island, it was dubbed Georgia, South Carolina rather than South Carolina, Georgia, to reflect the severity of the damage in Georgia, where the majority of the 700 people killed by the storm resided. Because of its limited lateral reach, this storm was mostly missed in historical records at the time. At the height of the hurricane, however, very low pressures were reported in Savannah, and one piece of equipment for monitoring wind speed was blown away at 80 miles per hour. It moved rapidly west after impact and burned out over northwestern Mississippi on August 29th. Many of the southeastern United States' largest and most intense tropical cyclones have extensive tracks that span thousands of miles. After 1881, the Carolinas were hit by a slew of devastating storms. Last Island Hurricane of 1856. The Last Island Hurricane was the season's first tropical cyclone, hurricane, and major hurricane. It was discovered on August 8th, 200 kilometers west-northwest of Key West, Florida. Because the storm was initially identified as a hurricane, it most likely grew further west. The hurricane rapidly strengthened to a Category 3 hurricane as it moved northwest. The storm's forward momentum halted just before landfall on August 10th, allowing it to achieve a peak intensity of 934 mbar with winds of 149 miles per hour or 240 kilometers per hour. The hurricane made landfall as a Category 4 storm on Last Island, Louisiana on the evening of August 10th. After making landfall, the storm quickly weakened to a tropical storm before dissipating over southeastern Mississippi on August 12th. The hurricane had a significant impact on coastal Louisiana. More than 13 inches of rain fell over New Orleans. Last Island, a popular resort located at the time, was completely destroyed by the hurricane. The barrier island was originally one contiguous island, roughly 40 kilometers long and 1.6 kilometers broad. As a result of the hurricane, Last Island was divided into a small island chain known today as the Last Islands. Storm prediction and identification were not advanced enough at the time to provide residents with much warning. Although some noticed signals of an approaching storm, it was too late by the time they recognized its severity. The storm surge of 11 to 12 feet caused by the hurricane destroyed all 100 homes on the island. During the hurricane, there were around 400 people on the island. Less than half of them survived. The island is now inhabited by pelicans and other seabirds. Hurricane Audrey, 1957. During the 1957 Atlantic hurricane season, Hurricane Audrey wreaked havoc on coastal Louisiana in the United States. On June 24th, Audrey formed over the Bay of Campeche and moved slowly north across the Gulf of Mexico. It rapidly strengthened just before making landfall as a Category 4 hurricane on June 27th near Sabine Pass, Texas. It continued north and developed into a powerful extratropical storm. The 12-feet storm surge caused $150 million in damage, or $1.543 billion in today's money, in Cameron, Louisiana. Audrey was officially responsible for 390 deaths, but unofficial sources claim the figure is much higher. Audrey is the sixth deadliest hurricane to strike the U.S. mainland since accurate record-keeping began in 1900. Hurricane Audrey was one of the first hurricanes to be tracked by weather radar. However, due to Audrey's quick movement and the limited communications infrastructure in the Cameron Parish, this additional data was ineffective in preventing loss of life. Some blamed the high number of fatalities on inadequate Weather Bureau warnings. Whitney Barty of Cameron sued the Weather Bureau for negligence in Barty versus the U.S., blaming the deaths of his wife and 5 children on insufficient warnings from the Bureau. The court ruled in favor of the Bureau, citing expert testimony that the warnings issued, quote, were as accurate as could be expected at the time, as well as numerous legalities. The ruling was upheld on appeal and numerous other similar cases were dismissed. Hurricane Katrina of 2005. Hurricane Katrina made landfall in New Orleans, Louisiana as a Category 5 storm. The storm slowed and weakened as it moved across Florida, but fueled by the warm air of the Gulf, it returned with a vengeance. Winds of 175 miles per hour slammed New Orleans, and 16-foot storm surges smashed against the city's levees before continuing on to cause havoc in neighboring Gulf Coast communities in Mississippi and Alabama. Following the storm, the levees would become a major point of dispute. Allegations of lack of upkeep and diversion of monies would be handled by politicians with agendas and argued by major media talking heads. As the finger-pointing and squabbling began, startled Americans watched the death toll increase to over 1,800 men, women, and children, resulting in an estimated $134 billion in damage. This is almost $200 billion in today's money. Katrina is ranked as one of the costliest disasters in U.S. history and the most costliest by some sources. Wow! This was our list of the worst hurricanes in the United States. If you think we missed something important, please let us know in the comments section below. If you like this video, don't let the wind blow you away and make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and family.